In the opening scene, we see a wedding, with a couple of bridesmaids and groomsmen, standing from the top to the bottom of the staircase, awaiting the moment when the newly wedded Matt and Sarah will exit the chapel. Immediately, the door opens up, and the bridesmaids and groomsmen shower the couple with glitters and flowers as they excitedly walk down the staircase. One of the bridesmaids and a groomsman by the name of Will and Jane stare at each other intently. They seem to be attracted to each other the moment their eyes meet. At the wedding reception, Will makes his way to meet Jane, who is making an order for a drink. They walk together getting to know each other, finding out the couple made them attend the wedding. Then, they stumble upon a deceased cat. Jane doesn't think it's a good omen when a cat drops lifeless at one's wedding. She, however, continues her conversation with Will, revealing her thoughts when she first saw him. She confesses her desire to get down with him in the coat closet the moment her eyes met his. This was why she kept staring at him the other time. However, she admits to not thinking too clearly. Will lets out a cough and admits that sometimes, clear thinking might just be too overrated. The deceased cat suddenly meows, making the pair stare at each other in amusement. In the next scene, they are in the beach club coat closet, panting heavily as they kiss each other, pulling off their clothes frantically so they can get to business already. Will stops halfway, revealing that he cannot go on, even though he's turned on by her. Instead, he would prefer they just talk. Jane gets pissed because she can't believe he just turned her on just to edge her. She walks out on him, telling everyone who cares to listen that they almost had sex in the coat closet. She picks up her bag and soon starts walking down the untarred and deserted road. Will drives behind her, beckoning her to get into his car. She finally lets go of her anger and enters the vehicle. When she gets in, she asks for a minute to compose herself. Will stops driving and tells her about himself and his career as a commercial photographer. Jane insists they shouldn't talk about their lives. He tries to understand why she just wants them to stop by the road and stay silent. Jane gives in and decides to talk about herself, talking about how she's a freelance writer and a journalist. Jane opens up about being an only child from a strict Catholic home, adding that what she just did with him is her worst sexual experience. Will assures her that her experience is not worse compared to his own story. He shares how he ejaculated in his own eyes when his teenage sweetheart, Jody, was giving him a blowjob. Jane gets intrigued, so she asks to know more about the girl called Jody. Will reveals how they became close, which was when his parents got into a fight. He would always hang out with Jody. He fell deeply in love with her and they had a favorite spot where they usually get laid in the front seat of Jody's car on her driveway. The time came for him to go out of town for his studies. So he left for school after promising to come back, which he did, after his last final fall semester. In an attempt to surprise her, he didn't inform her of his arrival. He just showed up at her house and found her after she had gotten laid with someone else in their favorite spot. He turned around and he left her place pretty shattered that night, and he never went back to say goodbye or end the relationship with her. Jane and Will drive down to a diner where they order some pie. Will asks Jane to share her first heartbreak story, but she refuses. In a bid to get back at her, he requests to have the pie he had given her, unless she agrees to tell him about her first heartbreak. Jane succumbs to Will's demands as she shares her teenage love story with Michael, who introduced her to graffiti and petty theft. He taught her how to drive and she was just in love with him, ignoring everything else around her school, and her friends probing questions to know more about him. A day came when he was supposed to come pick her up from school, but he didn't show up. So, she decides to check up on him at his house, and she finds out that his dad has been on his last days all the while they had been together, and he never mentioned it to her. When she confronted him, he simply told her that he needed to take some time off, and that was how they never saw each other again. After narrating her experience, Jane feels stuffy inside the diner and will suggest they go out on a ride. Jane handles the steering. She drives in circles while they scream in excitement, having as much fun as they can. Jane later drives down the road and sees a private property with a bold sign warding off intruders, but she insists on checking it out, paying no attention to the warning. The both of them step into the property, which has a park in it. They walk around the vast property, exploring every corner of the park and climbing onto a tower. It feels as though they've known each other for a while because they get along so well, and at intervals, a romantic wave blows through the atmosphere. They are about to kiss when Jane sees a man down below. The man threatens to call the cops on them if they don't get down as soon as possible. Jane attempts to defend them as she tries to make him understand that they lost their car, so they simply climb the tower to enable them to look around for their vehicle. They finally get down and Carl takes them on a ride towards the gate in his mini vehicle. They thank him and head to where Will's car is parked. Will suggests they share more about their humiliating past as he wants to hear more of her experiences. He convinces her to open up. After all, they won't be seeing each other when they part ways. Jane agrees that it will be a great way to free their overcrowded memory from carrying all the heartbreak, along with their daily activities. She steps into the car and urges him to go first. Will shares another experience from his senior year in college. He met this woman, Eve, on his way to class, and she came to his school to see her cousin. So, she asked him for directions to the train station and then requested he accompany her there. Next thing, they are in his room engaging in a hot session of sexual bliss. One thing leads to another and he follows her down to New York, where he practically lives with her, and he goes back to school only when he has tests or exams to write. They had fun and many sexual escapades. She went as far as putting him through many tests to find out how loyal he was to her. Sometimes she would encourage him to take another lady out and spend the night with her just to know if he was faithful or not. Luckily, he never yielded to her trickish suggestions, which prolonged their relationship for some time. A time came when he had to go back to school, and Eve wasn't willing to let him go back, so he tried to pacify her and they ended up professing love and commitment to each other, after which, they had great intercourse. Eve fell asleep and that was when he seized the opportunity to leave for school. After he got to school, he tried reaching her but she refused to take his calls because she was hurt by the way he left her. Will admits that was how their seemingly amazing relationship ended. He and Jane drive over a bridge and then get out of the car to take a walk around and gaze at the water. She tells him not to blame Eve as she probably felt hurt by the way he left her. She shares her own experience with Professor Wallace from when she was in college working on her master's degree. She starts telling the story but pauses midway, revealing that she no longer wants to continue as she needs to leave already, because she has a deadline to meet the next day, and it's already late in the evening. Will doesn't understand why she doesn't want to continue with the story. However, he accepts her decision and drives her back to the wedding venue so she can leave in her car. He gives her his contact. They bid each other goodbyes. Will hopes they will get another opportunity to see some other day for him to share more from his humiliating love life. Will gets back into the reception venue. He sits down staring into space when a young lady comes to join him where he is sitting. She recognizes him as the coat closet guy, so she offers to buy him a drink to make the wedding a memorable one for her. Will chuckles as he feels embarrassed about the way she chooses to remember him. He reminds her it is an open bar, so she jokingly requests to buy him a free drink. He smiles and then excuses himself to go attend to something. He walks down towards the harbor and sits on a vacant chair while staring at the water and listening to the music playing from his earphones. A call comes in from Jane, and they exchange some pleasantries as she starts telling him of Elton, a guy she met when she least expected to meet anyone interesting during her senior year in college. She fell for him pretty hard, they were so cool with each other, and he pulled out some really interesting stunts, interrupting her lectures and taking her along with him. Some other times he went as far as climbing the highest building in school just to profess love to her. She got really scared because he seemed intoxicated. Alas, it didn't end well. Jane sounds devastated as she shares her story with Will. He asks her location and she reveals she's sitting by the beach not too far away. Will set out to go join her after she sent him her location. On meeting her, Will shares his sad childhood story, which includes having a depressed mother whose sadness eventually rubs off on all of them. Sadly, his parents ended up getting divorced. The conversation leads Jane to share her childhood trauma emanating from her parents' divorce when she was 3. She decides to change the topic and suggests they grab something to eat because she is hungry. They get into the vehicle and Will plays some love songs from the playlist he made for her. Jane suggests they stop at a restaurant. On getting to the entrance, she realizes it is closed and she turns to leave. Will teasingly asks when she starts caring about what a sign says. They open the door and walk in to meet a bunch of old couples dancing, celebrating an anniversary. They grab a plate and Jane is about to show Will how a buffet is properly done when the couple celebrating their anniversary comes demanding to know who they are. Jane quickly says they are party crashers, which makes the old couple laugh heartily. The woman invites Will to come join her on the dance floor and her husband follows suit with Jane. After they step out of the party, Jane requests to know if he has a hotel room or a place they could go spend the night together. She wonders if he has a significant lover or girlfriend who could come up later on, but he doesn't. He reveals the situation he had with his last relationship, and since then, he has been single for a year. Jane believes him and he also asks about her relationship status as she gets into the car. Jane sighs and reveals she almost got married. Then she goes on to tell him about a lawyer guy named Mark whom she was set on a blind date with. Mark took her to go meet his family some 3 months back. He informed his parents and brother of his engagement to Jane, which ended after 13 days. She narrates how Mark's younger brother, Todd, came to confess his crush on her in the absence of his brother. After the act, she confessed to Mark that she slept with his brother, which led to the end of that very relationship. Jane explains how much she had loathed herself, which is what led to her making strong sexual advances at him earlier. She could have wanted to make out with anyone in the coat closet. It doesn't have to be him. Will listens raptly as she discloses those details. They eventually get to the front of his motel, staring at each other, intensively realizing they have told each other everything about their love life without running for the hills. They pounce on each other as they kiss with burning emotions. They soon get on the bed and Jane brings the whole sexual burning to a pause. She confesses that she needs to tell him about someone else if they are going to get intimate. She tried to talk about him earlier, but she paused midway. Jane recounts the days she had with Wallace Fielding, whom she met when she was rounding up her master's. They got close when she visited his office to discuss one of the books he had written, which she was grossly in love with. They got close, so she visited him one day and they ended up getting laid. They barely dated for more than a week when he asked her to move in with him, which she agreed to. Wallace was a reserved guy who didn't mingle much with other people, so they were in love and cool with each other. Until a day came when she wanted to attend a party. He promised to go with her, but on getting to the venue, he insisted on her going in alone while he headed back home. When she got back to the house after the party, she was surprised to see him drunk and lying outside the house. She helped him get back into the house. The next morning, she tried having a conversation about the previous day with him, and he revealed he had to party alone, and saying she should have insisted on coming back with him. Jane stares at him in disbelief, hearing him talk about marriage and keeping her to himself. He seems excited about the thought of marrying her. She couldn't bear the thought, so she packed her bags and left right in front of him without saying goodbye. A while later, she found out that Wallace had passed away. So, she went to his grave with flowers and blamed herself for his demise. Ever since, she couldn't date anyone for a while. Jane tears up as she reveals to Will that she's not the best person to save him, as she is a mess, and just in case he needs someone to save him, he should look elsewhere. Will understands how she feels about her relationships and the way she makes a mess of everything. He consoles her and assures her that he's not looking for her to save or fix him, because she's a big mess as much as he is. Will decides to talk about Audrey, who happened to be the lead singer of a band he was hired to take pictures of in a pub. They fell in love, and along the line, she moved into his house as their relationship became stronger. In the course of narrating Audrey's story, Jane and Will get emotional as they sit on the bed. Jane climbs up to sit on his lap and Will gently undresses her, both of them acknowledging what they share is different from their previous relationships. The next morning, after spending an intimate night together, Jane apologizes for interrupting his story. Will gets up and excuses himself to go use the restroom. While he's gone, Jane sees a book on the floor, so she picks it up to see what is in it. Will soon comes out and she seeks to know who Juliet is, and he confesses she is the rest of the story. It turned out Audrey got pregnant for him, and he only found out after he broke up with her, and she came to return his keys after moving out of his apartment. He wasn't ready to father a child, but he felt she should have informed him of his child before her parents, or at least given him an opportunity to have a say in what happens to the baby. Jane inquires about the child, Juliet, and Will reveals she will be turning 5 years old the coming week, and he has nothing planned out for her birthday. Jane stares at him in surprise because she doesn't expect such a story to pop out. She gets up from the bed so she can dress up and head home. He thinks she's pissed because he has a child, so he tries to calm her for them to resolve whatever is making her angry. Jane reveals how disappointed she is at him for concealing such a secret, especially after she asked if there was a significant relationship that could pop up someday. She believes he isn't reliable or to be trusted. Will tries to make her understand he didn't know having a child was included in the relationship she was talking about. He tries apologizing for not informing her about it before they get down. Things get sour as they engage in an argument because Will doesn't understand why she's making an issue out of it, when she has bailed out on almost all the guys she dated. He doesn't see why she's having an issue with it. Jane confesses it's the exact reason why she bails out of relationships with damaged guys like him, who will just pop up with strange stories any day. So, she's bringing an end to everything while she still can. She leaves the room angrily, slamming the door behind her. The next morning, Will takes a walk along the beach and then later decides to sit just by the waterside. Meanwhile, Jane carries her bags, walking around with so many thoughts running through her mind. Will puts a call through to Audrey so he can speak with Juliet via her phone. His eyes fill up with tears as he speaks to his little girl on the phone, promising to attend her birthday paint party. He confesses how much he misses and loves her over and over again. Audrey calls Juliet to come have breakfast, but Will asks her to hang on a little bit more so they can say their usual "I love you" in a rhythmic way until they run out of breath. Immediately after the call, Will burst into tears as it dawned on him that he had indeed made his life complicated. He gets up and unclothes himself, then heads straight into the water in his shorts. He immerses his entire body inside the water. On getting to the tarred road, Jane flags down a vehicle. The lady driving her notices how gloomy she looks, so she offers Jane her ears if she wants to talk about it. Jane turns down her offer with tears. She feels she has already done too much talking already. A few minutes later, she requests the driver to pull over by the side of the road so she can think for a few seconds, promising to tip her well. The lady tries to find out what is wrong with her when she realizes that Jane is crying. Jane requests the lady to take her back to the spot she picked her from, because there is something she needs to do. A car drives past them and she recognizes it as Will's. So, she asks the lady to just follow the car that drove by, promising the driver that she's not crazy. Will, on the other hand, is driving super fast in a bid to get to his destination, and hopefully find Jane by the beachside. On getting there, he runs around in search of her. Jane's cab pulls up in front of Will and she hurries out to go meet him. She doesn't find him at the exact spot where she expects him to be, so she climbs up a hedge so she can spot him easily. They both get to see each other and he rushes towards her. He confesses he doesn't talk about his daughter much, but Juliet reminds him of her a lot, and that it could be part of the reasons he was emotional after they shared their stories the previous day, so he could find an opportunity to tell her about Juliet. He admits that he is aware he is a mess and he does not have any answers, but ever since he met her, he feels they can work things out and be a part of each other's life. Jane appreciates him for saying all this. She confesses how she dreaded coming to the wedding which brought them together until she met him, and he started talking. And the more he spoke, the more she wanted to listen to him speak. She acknowledges that it turns out she also had a lot she needed to share too. Furthermore, she usually feels alone in her memories, but it was different with him. She confesses how much she wants their conversations to continue, but then she's afraid of failing again. And she doesn't want to believe that either one of them is a hopeless case. She stares deeply into Will's eyes as she genuinely reveals all that's in her heart and how she feels about him, their past mistakes, and her fears. Will smiles as he watches her pour her heart out. He assures her they don't have to promise the rest of their lifetime to each other, and all they have to do is just to keep talking as much as they want, until they don't have anything more to say. They stare into each other's eyes, smiling and ready to tell a different story with their new love adventure. He plants a loving kiss on her lips and she responds to his kiss, feeling safe and at rest in his loving arms.